I'll do the really short version of myself. Canadian, not American. That's all you need to know. Yeah, it's very important to us Canadians that we both A, point out that we're Canadian, and then B, point out everyone else who's Canadian. So if you first at some point name an actor or a famous person who's Canadian, I'll just shout Canadian. We can't help it. Maybe not all of them, I guess. For those who didn't hear, the joke was Justin Bieber there. Yeah, we don't obsessively point out all of them. I heard a joke a few weeks ago. It was, how do you know if somebody's Canadian? Don't worry, they'll let you know. It's accurate. All right, so we're here to talk about Visualized Flow, and the idea is that we do an actual practical workshop around this. So we're going to do some working together in groups for that, and hopefully try to get you guys very actually engaged in the process. This is a really quick one. I think we have about an hour and 45 minutes. If I were to do this for real with an actual company where everybody worked together, we would spend about a day on this. So it's to actually build a true visualized flow for a company is a very involved process. The idea with the workshop, though, is that I'm going to give you the tools that you can go and do it yourself. I hope. So let's talk about what that means first, though, and I'll just go through the presentation, and then we'll divide into groups. So why does that stop working? There we go. So how many people have a board that looks something like this? To do, doing, done. Let's just pick one random person. You left your hand up too long, so I'm going to pick you. Is that okay? No. So you have a board that looks like this. Does it actually say to do, doing, done? Okay. Okay, that's little enough. Or does anybody have one that just says to do, doing, and done? Of course nobody's going to put their hand up. Now they know I'm going to call them out. Is that what yours looks like? Oh. Everybody's screwing with me a little bit here. All right. So we'll go with you if that's okay, if I pick on you for a minute. So to describe to me to do, where do things come from in to do? Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's a sprint backlog, and that's what exists over here on the left-hand side. Basically, you went into some sort of a planning session, and this is the stuff you intend to accomplish over the next 2 weeks. And then what happens after that? Now they're going to make you use the microphone. I'm sorry. I know it's uncomfortable. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. The video will suffer. I don't mind.
Okay.
So then things go from over here. What happens in the next stage?
So you just do the tasks.
Okay, so it's you pull the stuff in and you start to work on it. So that means like the coding of things,
Yes.
maybe writing automated tests.
Yeah, maybe documenting and just doing the tasks. that you need to
Documenting,
do.
doing the tasks. Then what happens next?
Then the task, when you think that it is done, you commit, push to the server, and then somebody has to verify it. If it's software, then the tests have to be done, and otherwise, if it's a document, a procedure, let's say, so somebody has to review it, and then if it's verified, it goes to done. If it's not, then it goes back to doing.
Okay, perfect. So then after what they have here, which I don't recall the name, it's not important, they do the coding, they check it in, or they do the documentation or what have you, and then it goes over to another column, which is something like verification. I guess that's where a tester gets a hold of it and tries to break it, basically, or does break it, almost certainly. Finds issues with it, and then that kind of you go a little bit back and forth between these things, and then it goes to done. So when something moves to done on your board, it's in production?
Actually, I am embedded software engineer.
Okay.
So we're working, let's say, we have some subversions, and let's say we need to have enough features to have.
So it goes into some kind of a waiting state.
Yes.
Basically,
Yes.
it goes into a big batch to be released.
Correct.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping because it helps me make my point. So it's interesting, right? Because we write done at that point, but it's not actually done yet, right? Because done only means things are only really truly done when they're in the hands of a customer. You can get rid of the microphone. I'm done picking on you now. I really appreciate you being a good sport. To me, things are only actually done until when they're actually in the hands of a customer being used. What they call done in this case is actually some sort of a waiting state, right? Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with actually doing that. But I like to move away from calling that what I would actually call done. And then we had sprint backlog that happened over here. Any other work that needs to take place before it gets here? Or does it just magically appear ready to work on at that point? No. Prioritization, somebody writes user stories. Probably before that, somebody had a discussion about what the actual value of the thing is. Maybe somebody chose to invest in it. Depending on the size of your organization, the back part, the stuff that's happening before here, that could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years. I work with companies like large telecoms. This is like 10 years before things actually get into production. So that's what Visualized Flow is all about. What I'm trying to do is show that, pardon me, is show that the to-do, doing, and done, the simplistic view of the development team and the thing of what they're working on is not the whole picture. And Visualized Flow is about building a picture that your entire organization can look at to see things from start to actual finish, or if you want to put it real buzzwordy, from concept to cash. So let's talk about inflow. This is all the parts that's happening before that I talked about earlier, the things that are going on before they actually get to a team. I like to visualize different areas for places that stuff actually comes from, different inflows from different places. They might be different departments, they might be different customers. Some things just appear entirely on their own. Nobody actually requests them, they just show up. Bugs are a good example of that. These are all the different places that work actually comes from. And I like to visualize those different inflows separately so that the people who sit in these different places can see that their thing isn't actually the highest priority all the time. Has anybody ever met somebody who thinks the thing that they need is always the most important thing? Yeah, it happens sometimes. That's actually not all that unreasonable. Let's take our marketing department. Our marketing department is always running around with their hair on fire saying, this is the most important thing we could work on. That's actually their job. That's why we have them in that department, is so that they can represent this department with the most energy and passion that they possibly can. Of course they think that thing is the most important thing. That's why we hired them. That's why they're there. That's their job, is to argue why that thing is the most important thing. Testers are there to tell us why the bugs are the most important thing that we could possibly fix, because it diminishes our customers' quality. Of course they think we should be fixing the bugs before we go on to the next thing. That's their job. All of these people, of course the customer thinks the thing that they want right now is the most important thing, whether they're the only person in the world who wants it. They're the customer. They get to think it's the most important thing. So I like to visualize all of these flows separately. All the different places that work comes in, I like to show them. And then I like to show them going into a common, what I call backlog, so that when we're having these discussions with stakeholders, we can all see that different people have different things. This helps facilitate that conversation about, well, yeah, but this really needs to be done. Sure, but this really needs to be done. Okay, guys, we can only do one of them first. Everybody can now see where their thing lies in the priority order that facilitates that discussion. So that's the inflow, the stuff that's happening before. But there's actually even more happening before, right? There's more. Once it comes into the backlog, then we have some sort of refinement process. These are just examples that I'm giving. We're going to do our own processes and how they look soon. You know, maybe the product owner looks at it. They have to ask the team some questions. The team says, you need to find out this. They go a little bit back and forth between them for a while. Maybe there's a business process here where you need to secure funding. Maybe there's some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? A regulation process that's taking place here. There's laws that need to be verified before you can do things. There's a whole bunch of work that needs to happen to understand work often before we're working on it. Not in all cases. In startups, for instance, we often just throw things at the wall and hope that something works, right? We're just like, here, did that work? Will you pay us money? No. Okay. Will you pay us money for that? Yes. But in a lot of organizations, people need to understand the work before the work actually gets worked on. And then it goes into what I call ready. If you have a definition of ready, that's where this would be. But it's basically now it's what most people think of when they think of a backlog. What most people think of when they think of a backlog is only the top part of the backlog, the part that the team can actually work on. But every stage before this represents an investment, money that we've put in the hopes of eventual work coming out. Then we actually get into the part that you described, right? Then we get into, you went into planning, and there was some stuff at the top of the backlog, and you pulled that in, and you figured out what was required to do it, and broke it down into various things or what have you, and then you pulled it into a sprint and you started actually working on it. That's the part of the process you described, the visualization that most of us in our teams tend to do. And then it wasn't in production, right? So maybe there's a deployment testing, and then maybe there's an awaiting deployment area. Lots of companies like to batch things together before they deploy them, right? Lots of companies say, yeah, sure, we could go to production now, but we'd rather have 10 features when we go to production than one feature, which we'll not get into how I feel about that line of thinking. But this is what a lot of organizations do, right? They also have an outflow. They also have what stuff looks like after the development team or the testing team or whoever it might be has started working on it, that is the outflow. And only once it gets to the actual done, when it's in the hands of the customer, when somebody's hopefully paying us for it, does it actually get done. And that's basically what I call seeing the whole, the visualized flow. This is a very simplistic example. Depending on your organization, it will be more or less complex, and that's what we're about to get to here. But this is about tracking something from the moment somebody asks for it to the moment they actually get it. This is a great tool if you're in one of those organizations where you're constantly screaming about how you have too many things happening at once. Anybody in that situation? Oh my God, we're doing too much, we need to do less things. How many things are we doing? Can you show your manager how many concurrent projects you have going on? Or is it just some sort of random idea that people have that we're doing too much? I mean, you feel that you're doing too much, but can you walk them over somewhere and say, look, there's 50 parallel projects going on right now. There's another 25 of them in development. This is what a visualized flow showing the whole thing can help you with. So that was the basic, oh right, no, there's a little bit more. And then in some cases we'll require more detail, right? Like the development team in this is purely represented as a sprint. But when they actually work on something, they may require more detail. They might want to break it out into their own board where they have things like to do, doing, testing, it's in the staging environment, we're documenting it now, whatever it might be. But not everybody in the organization needs to see that information all the time. You want to abstract out the information that's valuable for people. A lot of people confuse the ideas of visibility and transparency. The idea that you throw all the information up there doesn't mean people can understand it. If you put your sprint backlog in front of the CEO of your organization, would they have any idea what any of it meant? Would it make any sense to them? Would it be useful? Would it help them in making good decisions? Probably not. Do they actually need that kind of information? Probably not. You need to find the right level of information that everybody can sort of work with that's valuable to them. Maybe your product owner has a process that they go through. Maybe they like to have checklists, or they like to make sure that they're passing certain criteria before they move things into ready. Everybody within this can sort of have their own breakdown of what that particular process means for them. Then it all comes together into a whole so that we can look at the company as an entire organization, and we can look at how much stuff the entire organization has going on. I think that was my whole presentation. Questions so far before we go into the workshopping part? Forgot how outgoing Lithuanians were. It's a few years since I've been here. Sorry, bad joke. All right, so let's break into groups, and we're going to start actually working on this and trying to build our own visualized flow. So I need to get you to do a little bit of work now. I think we're about 5 to 7 people per group. I'd like a table in the middle of you and some chairs gathered around that table. Please don't hurt each other. Do this in a calm and self-organizing fashion. Don't trample the camera. I believe you're all adults and you can handle this. Hey, you guys can stay up at the front. That's fine. Yeah, let me turn my mic off. Arrived yesterday. Table toward the back so that we make a little room rather than everybody trying to shove up front here. You guys are fine. You stay right where you're at. We're gonna try and do these mappings amongst the people at the table. So. All right. So did I hear somebody say they were all from the same company? No? But not the whole group. Okay, so we almost thought we were done. Grab a book. So I have some books I brought along. Grab one whenever you like. If you don't get a book, give me your information here. I will mail you a book. You will get it very soon, so please don't fight over them. I didn't bring nearly enough. My suitcase only had so much space in it. If you got one in the last session, please don't take one now. Sorry, guys. That's all of them. It's also available for free online. Write your information here. I will mail you a book. There's no reason any of you has to not have one. Just put it up there. I'll remind you at the end of the session. So now I'm going to make it just a little bit more difficult. First and foremost, I'm going to ask how many developers do I have? Please stand up, all the developers. Okay, perfect. Can you guys each go to one table? Oh, stay standing, developers, please. Can you guys go and stand by one table apiece? Like, just disperse yourself evenly throughout the room. Like, this table has no developer. I need a developer over there. Oh, I'm sorry. You were in my blind spot. I'm sorry. I really apologize. That, then I think we should be fine, right? You guys got 3. Bring one more over here. You got 3. We're going to go even. How many testers do I have? Developers, you can sit down. I'm really sorry about that. Testers, how many testers do I have? Not enough testers. Okay. Oh, 1? Okay, so I don't have enough to distribute. How many people do I have that work as Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, that sort of thing? All right. I guess you can guess what I want you to do. Please distribute amongst the rest of the groups. We're trying to get a balance of all the different roles. Wait now, you 3 stood up and then just sat back down.
Who's missing?
Okay, do I have people who were... Sorry? Yeah, no, that's fine. Do I have people who work in marketing, sales, any of that kind of thing? Okay, do I have anybody who works in custom... Oh, 1? No, you can stay where you're at then. Do I have anybody who works in customer support? Again, you guys can stay where you're at. Operations people. Do I have any operations people? How many jobs do you have?
We have Canadians.
All right, I think we've got it about as dispersed as I can get. The main point I'm trying to drive home here is if you try to do this in your organizations yourself, it's not enough to put the development team together. You need to, if you want to get the whole picture, you need to get people from the whole organization to start having this conversation. What I say to people is, look for the fuzzy spots. So if we had a lot of sort of people that actually work in teams here. So here we have the teams. And it's going to be pretty obvious to you guys what kind of work you actually do. But to the left of that, it's going to start to get fuzzy. You're going to be like, some people do some stuff. The bosses, they make some decisions of some kind. And then I put it somewhere and someday it gets deployed. I think and then somebody supports it or there's something that happens there. some people who answer phones, or there's somebody, they make sure it doesn't break down. When you start to find those fuzzy spots, you need to go and find the people that sit in those fuzzy spots. So we're going to start with this one, or we're going to start with the one that makes the most sense for the people at the table to start with. Start with what you know. Start with what makes sense to you at the table. Now, everybody's from different groups, so we're going to get a little bit of a mix, but the idea here is share what your process actually looks like. So let's start with this sprint one. What goes on in your sprints? Oh, right, I haven't distributed supplies. Let's keep this orderly. One person from each table come up and grab some Post-it notes and enough markers to do everybody. Yeah, please just evenly distribute a little bit more.
One marker or a lot of markers?
And markers for the table. So 3 or 4 at least for each table. There should be 30-ish there, or not. Yeah, please, even it out a little bit. The larger groups, send some more people. I've got lots more Post-it notes. Markers I don't have more of. Yeah, grab some big ones as well, please. So I'm sorry I didn't set all this up in advance, but I came in and all the chairs were in rows, and I thought, well, I can move them around, but then I'm going to get super sweaty before everybody gets here, and then it's not going to be real comfortable for me to stand up here. So what we're going to start with, do you guys have markers? Yeah, okay. We're going to have to share a little bit, but we'll make do. So what we're going to start with is talking about this bit. I'd like you guys to describe what your process actually looks like inside of the team. Do you have a planning session, and then do you actually go into a sprint, or do you have testers in it? Do you do documentation in there? And write each process step as an individual card. So to do, development, test. This is just examples, of course, and then you have it done at the end. Just write each one as an individual card, and the whole group sort of discusses and agrees on where they have overlap. All right, let's start and see how... No, this is the process that you have today. I do not want to hear how you guys think you should work, or how you wish you did work, or how the document says you're supposed to work. I want to know how you actually work. Let's go for 5 minutes. See how you do. We'll do a group share, and then we'll adjust. Well, it's very hard when I can't hear. Don't follow me the whole time, please. As a group, yes. Yeah, that's fine. You can all just sort of describe yourself. How about one of you start, and then the rest of you kind of say when you have something similar. Oh, well, let them know. You guys have a non-Lithuanian speaker.
Just the sprint. Så det er bare having more.
Turn up the light here. I think you just turned off.
I don't think I did that, actually. I think it was over there.
Okay. Because it's very.
I know this is not well suited to filming, but
But was microphone?
finish at 3:15, is it? Oh, right, it's here.
Yeah. 250.
2,
50.
2,
30.
3:15, right? Is when
Yeah,
the
oh,
coffee
yes,
break
that's
starts.
true.
Yeah. Oh, we got loads of time. We're great.
Do you need to plug in?
Yeah, but I can fix it.
No. No.
Test. There we go. Hey, everybody. Can I have your attention for just a moment? Up at the front, guy with the microphone. Thank you. Sorry, you can get back to it in just one moment. I know the last thing you were saying always feels like the most important thing you've ever had to say, but I have to interrupt at some point. Real quick facilitation trick I have to show you. If you see me do this, and you're talking, raise your hand and be quiet. And then if you see somebody else doing that, then do the same. Everybody get to, let's test it. Go back to talking for just a few seconds. And then I go, perfect. That way I don't have to yell over you and interrupt you. It's just a slightly more nice way to end to end the break. So the Swedes are not nearly as polite as they think, trust me. I'm Canadian. I come from the land of please and thank you. So I would like to talk about what each group have. If you could just pick one group, pick one person from your group and send somebody up and basically just start putting your stuff under here and really quickly run us through what each step of it actually means, please and thank you. So let's start. Okay, let's do this first of all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the groups. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's start with group 3. 3? Come on up and grab the microphone and just walk us through what's happening as you're putting the stuff up there. And please make it flow from left to right. I think you have to turn it on and just give it a minute.
Okay.
There you go. Perfect.
So okay, we have at first backlog. That's all ideas stored and all some forgotten stuff stored also.
Mhm.
Okay, then we have grooming. Here is the place that where ideas comes, and we pick an item from backlog and start grooming, and then we decide to which subjects goes to sprint planning. To sprint. Okay, sprint is what the process of that's going to do. Okay, then.
So sorry, that one you had there, that's where, yeah, sprint planning. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm. When we plant a work and then it's going in development, it's like doing place.
In dev, yeah.
Then code review. Okay, I put everything then I. Okay, after code review, we go to quality assurance and testing stage. Then if everything is okay, we deploying to staging. After that, like thing is done. After that, we going to live demo, and then we getting support, and then going back the process.
So you touched on a really important one here as well, right? Is anything ever really done? The moment it actually comes out, then you have to support the thing for the rest of the time, which is a little bit of a different way to see it. So I'm going to leave
It's
support
going
for a
back.
moment. Exactly, it feeds back into the beginning of the thing. That's the important part. So I'm actually just going to break these up a little bit because you went a little further out than I was planning, but that's fine. If I could have that refine note behind you there, it would be great, or I'll just lean in, thanks. So I'm just going to show the different parts here. Here we have refine. And then this is actually inflow, right? This is where stuff actually comes in. And then we have the actual teams in progress, we'll call that. Oh, wait now. Okay. Just give me a second here. There's a lot of moving around of post-it notes. You see why I had you write things like this. So quick question, to do. That is, oh, right, okay, grooming, sprint planning. So there's actually probably something in the middle of these,
like
right?
grooming, we can sprint planning.
Do you do everything that you, do everything that you groom?
Team, what we doing? We do everything or no?
I already know the answer to that question. It's no, but yeah, it was definitely a trick question. But we'll put grooming here, refine, and then we have, because there's actually something in here where stuff sits. There's a queue, right? Mm-hmm. In progress, and then we have an outflow over here. Are these people, for most of you, are they in the development teams themselves, or is this something external to you? Quality assurance, deploy to staging.
It's, I think, is in the same team.
So I'll put them in the in progress as well. Deploy to staging as well? Yep. And then we have some sort of an outflow, right? Where things happen. Perfect. I'm going to add a ready in here because that becomes a queue. This is an important thing to look for when you're doing these activities. Where do you have stuff that just sits there? Where do you have piles up of stuff? Like we saw, I've lost track of like you mentioned earlier, we queue stuff up in order to release it, right? There's a batch of things that wait somewhere. These are the queues that we have, and it's important to see where they are, where stuff just sits and waits. So let's do another group. Let's go with group 4. You're group 4, right? Nobody knows anyway. Come on up. Put the stuff where you think it makes sense at the moment. If it's the same as something else, just put it under the something else for us, please. Let's do this. In progress. Flow.
Okay, I can do that, but I'm not sure if I'm doing that right.
That's fine. There's no wrong answers.
So my team will help me. We have to do. I think I should put it right there.
Yeah, so that is. Are we talking about the development team to do?
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Then you're in the right spot.
Specification. Development. Code review. Functional testing, is that right?
Oh, here, you want me to? Here, I can hold the mic for you.
That's
There you go.
complicated. Testing. Yes. Deploying to testing environment. Test.
Integration test? Yeah, great.
Uh,
You know what, I can just repeat. You just say and I'll repeat, yeah. Documentation, yeah, that's something the team itself does as well. Deployment, that's actually an outflow. Let's just give a little space to that one and put it over here, yeah. And done. And then it's at the customer, right? Perfect. Let's do one more and then move on, I think. Let's not just keep repeating this. Let's go with group number 1, please and thank you. So you just read it and I'll repeat it is the easier thing, unless you really want to have the microphone. No? Okay.
So, our process is quite simple. So
Backlog, yeah.
then we don't have any
No refinements, so things just arrive at the team, yeah.
so we have to do progress, result, that means task done.
Yeah,
but not
done, yeah.
verified yet. Review, verify,
Review, verify. So, sorry, what does review, verify mean?
because we're kind of working with cyber-physical systems, so we have documents review, sign-offs, or testing. of the
Okay,
code,
document review, sign-off, testing of the code,
system testing,
physical system testing, and then
it's
done.
Done.
Okay, so there's no, are there any queues in this process? The backlog obviously is a queue where things wait.
Right.
When things are reviewed, do they immediately go to production?
We can go back to to-do.
They can go back to
there's
to-do?
issues with the task.
But say they don't go back to do they just then go directly into production?
Right.
Perfect, okay, so there's nowhere that they sit and wait for an operations team to deploy them or anything like that?
Not now.
No. I know that not everybody actually works in the same team. We're just trying to draw some examples. Does anybody who hasn't come up, because we'll just spend a lot of time if we bring everybody up to the board, does anybody have anything that's a little bit different than what's up here that they want to come up and show? Something a little bit weird, or did we get the general idea of what we're going for now? Okay, so there's an analyze. Bring me that one. Let's throw that up there as well. Yeah, perfect. So there's an analyze stage. Perfect. So now the thing that we want to do, as I mentioned earlier, is look a little bit for the fuzzy areas. Where are the areas that we don't have a lot of information? It's very obvious that everybody in this room works on, or the majority of the people work on producing the actual product. I don't need 2 microphones. Work on producing the actual product, because you see how much detail there is here? and then the product owner does something over here. There's some kind of, and stuff comes from somewhere. Somebody has ideas at some point that end up somewhere. So let's spend a little bit of time focusing on the fuzzy areas. What parts of this, let's spend a little bit of time on the inflow in each group. Backlogs don't just come into existence. They came from somewhere. Where do the ideas come from? What are the inflows of the thing? I closed the screen so you can't actually, let me just throw it back up real quick. I do like so. What kind of inflows do you have? Did I need to drop it, don't I? Yeah. Oh, if we just kill the lights over there, we can get a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. You guys are going to be in charge of light switches from here on out. Where does stuff come from? What are the inflows to this backlog in your organization? Are they from individuals? Sometimes they're from individuals. Sometimes you're in one of those organizations where you have like a real strong CEO who's convinced everything they say is the most brilliant thing that a human's ever said, and they want us to do all the things. We can list them as an inflow. They're a person that actually has input into this. Do they come from different departments? Do we gather them via different sources? Do you have like a feedback section on your website? Are people able to publicly report bugs? Do they come in from customer service? Where does stuff arrive in your backlog from? Let's have that conversation for, say, 10 minutes at the tables. And then I will kill that again. Me. There we go. I could. I can. I mean, I can do with the time what's needed. You think I should give them a break?
I don't know, maybe you can ask all of them.
That never works. I'll give them a break. I'm a smoker anyway, so I'd rather have a break.
And you should not forget to turn off.
Oh yeah, right.
You need
Thank you. Yeah.
that one. Probably you should go search for the flowers all around.
Ah, there we go. There we go. I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
Everybody always gets real worried in the beginning. They're like, "Oh, it's not working. It's not working." It always works eventually. You just give it a minute. Wasn't that a much nicer way to interrupt you than be like, "Excuse me, stop talking"? No, I wasn't talking to you there. Sorry. All right. So, which groups didn't come up last time? You guys didn't come up, right? Let's see what you got. Oh, you put it all on one post-it note. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Hmm?
So we focus mostly on.
Oh, you're supposed to. Yeah, sorry. My bad.
Thanks.
My bad. You got one
I've only got
posted,
one,
so you're good. Yeah.
Should be able to handle this. So ideas come, from customers, both current and future. So our sales team often brings in ideas from prospective customers or people who see gaps that we might be able to fill, as well as our marketing department also bringing in new ideas, ideas for new product lines or new offerings. For some of the government-related work, the law, changes in the law might suddenly bring in new requirements. Even in my business as well, we're in healthcare, but we certainly have changes in healthcare laws or privacy laws like GDPR will bring in new requirements all of a sudden. Technology and security, so changes to technology. The technology team, we're always wanting to update things to work on new technology, and we always discover new security vulnerabilities, or the people trying to get at our systems do, so all of a sudden we need to protect ourselves against certain security vulnerabilities, and we have bugs coming in through the support team. So this was our list, our single post-it
Perfect.
note of places where we get ideas.
Excellent. Thank you. Which other group didn't go? You guys didn't go yet, right? You also put it on one. That's okay. Come on up.
So they come from stakeholders, they come from clients, we gather some customer feedback, the team's requirements themselves. So HR team, marketing
I'm just
team.
going to interrupt you. Thank
Yeah,
you for pointing that one out. Very few people ever say, hey, the team needs to put some stuff up there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, your customer's never going to ask you for an automated test system. It's going to be your team that pushes for that, but it's incredibly valuable, right? It's of value for your customer to have an automated test system in place. So remember the team as a stakeholder.
Makes us deliver faster. Legal regulations. That's just given requirements. Trends. Also, bugs and incidents could be a source for new requirements.
Awesome. Just stick it up there. We're going to take a break in just a moment and come back and discuss some more. But it's actually kind of good that you guys put those as one single post-it note. Well, not really, because it can't move them around, but it does help me to make my point a little bit. So actually, the inflow is really interesting. You saw how I visualized it earlier as separate columns, right? But actually, an even better way to visualize that is as separate flows of your product like this, right along one side, so that when your organization looks at it, they can say, okay, so right now we have this many projects on go because customers asked us, this many things on the go because the team asked us to do it. You can even use it as a simple prioritization mechanism, like if you put legal requirements at the top. I mean, they're almost always at the top, right? If something comes in and it's a legal requirement, you now have a simple heuristic where the person who gets the work immediately as part of the inflow can say, well, this goes right to the top of the queue. Or maybe incidents go right to the top of the queue. You can create prioritization along this way and a little bit more detail about what each of these people are. When I do this as a full-day workshop, we break each of these out into its own large post-it, and we start describing that type of work. What happens with customer feedback? How does that usually come in? What does it look like when it arrives? What kind of priority does that stuff usually have? How do we like to think about it? How do we receive the information? How do we give feedback on the information once it's done? We can get a little bit more detail about each of these inflows. Questions so far? We'll call that a no. I got a question on the break, which I think was a really good one. Couldn't I do a lot of this information beforehand? If I do this in my organization, couldn't I write out, I know how the process looks. Couldn't I write stuff out beforehand? Yes, you could do that. What I find the value in doing it as a group is, and the reason I'm having so many of you come to the front and talk and sort of repeat the same things over and over, is the conversations that spawn as a part of this. Is when all of a sudden we're talking about how our development process looks and somebody says, no, but no, it doesn't work that way. Yes, it absolutely works that way. No, it doesn't work that way. Then all of a sudden you're having that conversation about how things work. You're also giving more insight into the other people in the organization as to how different parts of the process look, right? Now all of a sudden the CEO who used to say, well, why does it take so long to do everything, can see all the different steps that are actually, wow, what is functional testing, deployment testing? Okay, this one just says test, but deploy to staging. Oh, and then you have to do the documentation. Wow, there's a lot more involved in this than I thought there was involved in it. You get a lot of really good conversations by doing this as a group. And whenever I do it, even in full organizations, I have them break into smaller groups and do their own versions of it, because very rarely do I see that everybody says the same thing when they get up here. You can have people who work at the same company and they're like, oh, but we never actually do functional testing. What? I thought we always did functional testing. And you get very good conversations out of that. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Also that was well observed is actually a lot of this stuff really does just stack up into a definition of done, right? When you look at these different parts of the process, when you look at the in-progress part of it, you could take all of these and you could also call them the definition of done for that part of the process. So you're building that understanding of it as well. I threw up a few of these individual ones just in case the point didn't come across earlier. I put the CEO at the top. That's a really good discussion to have. Is the thing the CEO said always the most important thing? Is that the thing that's supposed to go to the top? Well, that's... But actually, I think this is a funny one because you say that sarcastically, right? But, I mean... CEO is supposed to run the company. They are supposed to have the authority to decide these things, right? To me, as long as it's clear that that's the way we're operating, then I think that's okay. Do I think it's the best way? No. But at least then we can have that discussion. If you say to me, I am the person who's in charge of this entire organization, and I get to decide this, and I have decided my things immediately go to the top of the queue. Well, then at least that's clear for everybody now, right? It's not just stuff appears out of somewhere and somehow it gets prioritized, and then we're all making those little snarky remarks over coffee about why we're working on the new project because it's the CEO's pet project. I mean, at least then they're being clear that this is the way that those decisions are getting made. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where that's gone up and then the CEO says, yes, I decide everything all the time. I mean, it does help them to question that kind of assumption at that point, right? Oh, wow, there's all these other people who want stuff done too? Oh, you think that I'm more important than the customers. Oh, maybe I'm not actually more important than the customers. You get sort of good conversations out of this. I don't want to go through each one of these steps. If this was a full workshop, I would say we go through each of these parts more and more detail wherever required. I don't want to do that because it'll just spend a lot more time that we don't need to spend. But I'd like to talk a little bit about outflow, and let's just do this as in you shout out something for me. What other kind of stuff would we see in outflows? What other kind of things happen there? Sorry? Marketing, excellent example. We stack stuff up so that we can do a big product marketing effort on it. Anything else? Training, another excellent example. We stack stuff up so that we can train our customer or whoever it is or our support personnel or whatever on exactly how stuff works before we deploy it to production. I want to be real clear because I'm talking about putting a lot of queues before deploying to production. I don't want that. But if that's the way it looks today, then that's what we should be showing, right? My teams that I work with now, we're very proud. We're deploying to production every single day now. But that was because we figured out what actually was involved in deploying to production and then systematically reduced the need for those things. So this is about showing the way things actually work. Other stuff? Anybody have an operations team that they hand over to for the actual deployment? Support. Oh, I read that as more customer support, but that could very well be what it means. So this is, the operations one's a really good example. If you have a queue that is operations and you show all of the stuff that is waiting for operations to deploy it, you're going to start to get your company to consider things like DevOps a lot easier. When you've got something that's all the way down, we've put in all this work that came before it. And now what it's waiting for is this team who's too clogged up. I'm not blaming operations. It's not their fault, right? They've got too much to do. Everybody wants them to deploy their stuff. And you're having a conversation with your manager. They say, well, when am I going to get the thing? And you say, well, whenever all these other things get done. That makes it a lot easier to have this conversation about, okay, well, how could we get that to happen faster? You mean it's almost done? I can almost have it today, but I can't quite have it. How could I make it so I could have it? Automated tests, repeatable deployment processes, anything like that. Anything else anybody sees in the outflow? All right, I think you get the general idea. So then the only other stage of this is about sort of figuring out where we abstract those layers. So where we are going to create a upper category, right? Because again, we don't want to show all the information to everybody all the time. We want to show the appropriate amount of information. And this is very much, in my mind, how epics and things like that break down, right? The epic is somewhere sitting in the organization, and then the team is working on a particular part of it. So I'd like you to just have a 5-minute discussion around the table. If I remove these categories, use the big Post-its for this. What categories would you make? How would you represent this in your organization so that everybody in your organization could understand it? Everybody too tired? Have a little discussion, 5 minutes, and write out some big Post-its for that, please. You define as, oh.
And then after that, we decide which one we're going to deliver next. Delivery go kaip Čia aišku, jeigu gražiai, ten poetiškai, kažkokią istoriją, galėtų nurašyti kažkokią istoriją, bet čia ne, bet čia irgi input, output.
Input arguments, execute, return.
The Frankenstein model. It's alive! No, that's not.
Alive, це файно.
Aš 2 turiu savo tau. Ir dar turiu 2 šunus. Ką aš 2 šunų turiu
All right. Let's see where we're at. Let's try for volunteers this time. I'm going to be real ambitious. Which group would like to come up? Yeah? Great. Come on up, group 3. Come on. Put it all up and then I'll give you the mic and you can describe it.
Then specification.
Yeah?
Specification, then processing when everything is here, yeah? Yeah. And delivery.
Yeah.
It's
I'm sorry, the microphone thing's falling apart, guys. It's yeah. Perfect. I haven't shown this because it's a handy tool to do while you're doing it. Normally I'd be using a whiteboard, so just so that you can show where the various parts are, right? Perfect. Anybody else want to go? Let's have another perspective. The reason I keep doing the same thing over again is because then maybe it triggers ideas that you didn't have about the way your process works, right? New ideas and possibilities. Then there's a refinement. Mm-hmm. Create deeper understanding. Oh, a decision point. Excellent. Those are very good to point out when we actually have a decision to make and when we set priorities. Yep.
And then the to-do is basically the creation of stuff.
The actual building of the value.
Yeah. And then lastly, we have the Frankenstein. It's alive.
The Frankenstein We Go Live. I can honestly say I've never heard it referred to as a Frankenstein before, but I think it's pretty accurate for most people anyway. Anybody else have a different perspective they want to show? Okay, that's fine. Good. So we have some different examples of how you might visualize this in your organization. Once again, the important thing is, because we were all here and we were all discussing it, now we can actually all understand what the individual bits mean. If you go and you put your development team in a room and they write all this stuff down, and then they come out to your CEO and they're like, this is how this information is going to be shown to you from now on, they're not going to understand. Because they weren't part of making it, they weren't part of building that group understanding of how these things actually work. So let's do a real quick recap. First of all, I'll write these things down. Start with what you know. This is really weird. I haven't written on a whiteboard possibly ever. Start with what you know. Get the people that you're closest to, the smallest group that you know, and put them together and start talking about what you actually know now. And then look for the fuzzy spots. For fuzz. That's with Zs. Those are called Zs. Sorry, I can't help it. It's in my nature. Look for the fuzzy spots. Look for the parts that you don't understand what's going on and where it's unclear, and then create clarity. So I would like to talk about the fuzzy spots in your organization, because I would like to get everybody to leave here with something that's a little bit more actionable for them, that they can actually go home and do something about. So I'd like each of you, and do this as a group discussion, even though you're in, make your own individual lists, but do it as a group discussion, because again, you might inspire others for something that they haven't thought about. I'd like you to take about, we'll say 9 minutes, and talk about with the rest of the group where the fuzzy spots are in your organization. Where are the fuzzy spots, and what do you need to know about them? What questions do you need to ask those people when you find them who are in the fuzzy spots? Clear? I'm seeing a little bit of a... Okay, let's see how it goes.
Maybe you can because we discussed it.
Sorry, and who is in those fuzzy spots?
I need, and it's a different department, and I have all the tasks, so I know all the things. So there are no fuzzy spots.
But you can describe your process, and maybe for us it will not be fuzzy spots.
Well, it's a short process, so it's hard to explain all the things. So it's like client goes to the consultant, then he fills the form for me, I do the request and send it to the client, and that's it. And because it's a short process, so it's, there is no such thing.
But what kind of request? For me it's very
different kinds of process, but every process takes maximum 30 minutes.
For development?
For everything.
Okay, let's say you have to ask for development, then who will decide what to do? You work at support? Then what kind?
I work for group shared services. I do like debt certificates and something like that. What the customer has in our bank, and I print it and send it to them. So maybe there is development, but there is another department for that. Maybe that's the first part. For me,
Kiedyś nie cheguei do skill,
So do you have any things like, I don't have some clear examples of we had the why. Okay. That's the purpose. And then what other teams do? That's kind of the conversation or I hate hearing my voice. The handovers. Why are we?
Problema būna galbūt kas pasiims jos įgyvendinti. Taip, mes sugalvojo kažkokią idėją, jį atos, kas ją pasiimtų. Tai esmės įstaigas gali skirti daug, bet kuriam. Čia jau arba iš esmės savanoriškai kažkas taip pasiimtų, tikrai įgyvendintų tą idėją. Arba tik tai galbūt išsirinkime, kas iš to I did also. I understand why. Take away.
Čia yra daug.
Nesupranti procesą savo kompanijos. Ne, čia supranti savo kompanijos procesą.
Yeah, so get some more insight into this process. You make it sound fast.
It's not that you will write an interpreter should use this and
I mean, just thank you. Thank you. You actually need to create kind of low level requirements can be defined that you afterwards need to verify. Unit test integration that's very you need to be very, very specific. For sure, they don't care. They just say, they just give you a system level requirement, and it's up to you to find to develop out the requirements. You interpret how the actual system. We do a whole lot of this is kind of
so then you can, like, if you have the specification, you can implement it any way you want as long as you do it.
It's the product level and the system level. Yeah, you still need, but there are thousands of ways how you can do that.
But the system analyst, I mean, you and the team could talk about what's the best way to do it.
Yes, and exactly. This is a teamwork. Yes, that's where you will work out this requirement. But this is kind of
that stuff I'm part of. That's where you drink coffee and stand in front of the whiteboard and say it that would work.
Because when you discuss with actually the software developers, they are expecting, okay, just give me a list of 1,000 requirements, just implement it. They also need to work out
I think for me sometimes the funniest is the law.
All right. Oh, my mic's not on. Almost. There we go. So let's do just a quick bit of sharing. Anybody who found something interesting that they feel like they want to share with the rest of the group? Where were the fuzzy spots in your organization? So I have this tool I use, which is called Let It Get Awkward, where I just stand here and it gets real awkward. And eventually one of you will speak. So I bet mine's higher. Thank you. Microphone here. I'll hold.
Okay.
You don't have to put it up. Just read it out. Okay.
I can read it. In the input in this first, I stand requirement is something like the origins of requirements. Sometimes fuzzy.
The origins of requirements, where things come from. I'm just repeating for the video.
Processing.
The qualification of people in this area? What do you mean? Competence? So you're a little unclear on what the competence of the people is in this area. Okay. Not whether they are competent, just what their competences are, right? Yeah, okay, good. Hmm? 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 Yeah, not everyone's actually following the definition of done. You can raise that when having this discussion here, yeah? Clarity of goals, it's a little bit unclear in the input that things are a little bit too abstract and we don't know what's missing there. Hmm? Perfect, thank you. Anybody else? All right, so I'm just going to show a, no, okay, it was, just 1 second. I'm just going to show a more real world example of this because during the actual presentation, I don't show a real world example because it gets a little bit too complex to convey the information. Also, then people start reading the text on the notes rather than paying attention to the message I'm trying to get across. So I got a great question earlier. Have I ever done this in an organization that's like more than the people you could fit into this room? Yeah, I have. We worked at Ericsson on a process like this. I would say it took us probably a year. And this is across, like, the amount of employees in the departments were probably about 3,000 people. We didn't do these sessions with 3,000 people, but there was nobody in that 3,000 people who didn't work directly with somebody who was involved in the sessions. So we started with what we knew. Oh, now I've covered my own notes, but we started with what we knew. We found the teams, and then we found the fuzzy parts, and we figured out who was at the fuzzy parts, and we brought them into the discussion. Maybe a little bit more of the team can go at that point. They don't need to be involved in every detail. And then we found the fuzzy parts again, and we brought those people in, and we just basically repeated this process over a long, long period of time. So, something a little bit more real world. Where did there it is. Maybe somebody could just kill the light over there for me, please and thank you. So this is from a really big radio tower provider that I worked with in Eastern Canada where I'm from. They build, you don't need to read the actual text, they build radio towers. I don't know how to describe it any better than that. Both the hardware and the software in radio towers. I think at this time they had just completed the largest such operation. They had given like radio coverage to all of India, which was apparently pretty big in the radio world. I don't know a lot about radio, but apparently it was a really big deal. And, they were starting to get to the point where not everybody really knew what was going on anymore. So we went through this exercise for about a day. I think we were about 40 or 50 people who did it. And you can see along the left here is what we talked about. It's where work actually comes from. Support brings in work here. Sales, there's a tendering process. There's a sale of standard products. So these are things we have to submit bids for, and these are things that come as part of the off-the-shelf standard product. This is what they called sustaining work, which was about, basically maintenance and that kind of thing. Then they had something called MPI. It was a long time ago. I don't remember what MPI means. But we didn't just write the headings of these things. We talked about who was involved in the various stages, what kind of questions needed to be answered, what kind of state was this work in when it came in, like tendering. You can't actually read it, but it says stuff like not very clear, not much time to do it, nobody to get answers from, that kind of thing. It just describes the state of the work. Customer support, I think, was just supposed to be there. And then we have this sort of process that they go through. So they go from, I don't remember why customer support looks like that. I'm sure there was a reason. Then they go to backlog. Then they have the refinement process. Then they have their ready process where stuff actually just sits and waits. Then they have development. They have quality assurance. They have deployment preparation. And then we ran out of whiteboard. And then they had awaiting deployment. And they had the actual, what does that one say? Feedback, does it? Yeah, we'll assume it says feedback. I show this for a few reasons. One is it's important to see that you know, these will be different and a level of detail is also required. But then there's a really subtle one. It's actually really important to take all this stuff and make it look pretty in the end, oddly enough. All these post-it notes and stuff, everything we got here started out like that. It started out with people writing individual post-it notes, big mess up on the whiteboard. And then while they were doing the next discussion, I would go through and make it look a little bit prettier, write it down in a good form, because it's actually an important tool to bringing people on board and making sure that we're agreed and we're clear about stuff, is to get it to fit into sort of nice, kind of easy to read formats. And then eventually you can convert it to something digital or what have you. So I think we're pretty much done. We got about 10 minutes left. I want to leave time for questions, although all the evidence thus far would indicate I don't need to do that. I have, first of all, anybody who didn't get a book, if you come up and you give me either your email address or your physical address, I will contact you and I will get you a book. It's no problem to mail them, so just come up, write. I mean, it saves me a step if you write your physical address on the paper, and then I can just mail it to you. But if you don't want to do that, then give me your email address. I'll mail you, and then I'll write your. Then I'll ask for your address, and then however you want to do it, doesn't really matter. And I'll get you a book mailed in the next few weeks, basically, so you'll get a physical copy. I guess there's a way to distribute information afterwards, right? Like presentations and all that kind of stuff. So all that will get distributed. I also have a new thing that I'm working on, and so this is my MVP version of it, as in MVP meaning I didn't actually do anything at all. I have a new workshop I'm working on based on the talk that I had earlier today, which is called 50 Tools Every Scrum Master Should Have. What I'm interested to know is if there's a market for this in Lithuania, if you are actually interested to come to a workshop called 50 Tools for Scrum Masters, where we basically look at practical tools, how you can implement them, what they're for, that type of thing. I put a section over there for it. If you just drop an email address, Post-it notes are unfortunately not GDPR compliant, but you're dealing with me as a person. This isn't going to get put into like some mailing list that's going to be, you want me to get rid of your email address, you just mail me and say don't mail me anymore and I'll stop mailing you. So it's very, it is, I guess, GDPR compliant in that way. Actually what we'll do, stuff's not sticking to the walls real well. So if you want to do the 50 tools, give me one note with your email. If you want to get a book, give me another note with your information. If you want both, then I need 2 notes, and I'll just stack them in piles here. That's my low-tech solution to this problem. Are there any other questions before we finish up? I really hope you enjoyed this. I think there's a feedback form coming.